All right, today we're going to be talking about our method for convincing someone to give you a second chance. And the best part is that we have a lot of confidence in this method because we have a lot of success stories to back up what we're about to suggest to you. So there are really, in my opinion, 5 key steps to asking an ex to give you a second chance. And what you're going to find is unique about these steps is a lot of them are not going to have anything to do with tactics or strategies, reverse psychology sort of tricks, or, send this text and you'll immediately get a response from your ex. In my opinion and in my experience, those tend to be really overrated. I want to get to the heart, the meat and potatoes of what actually works. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my 5-step method for convincing someone to give you a second chance again. So step number 1, understand that the circumstances around when you ask for a second chance matter. So most of the people that I come across make the classic mistake of asking for too much too soon after a breakup. And our internal research has really indicated that the vast majority of readers of our website and watchers of our YouTube channel, basically everyone who enters our orbit, they're usually on the receiving end of a breakup. That means we've had over a decade of study on really their behaviors post-breakup, and almost all of them fall into the same trap of wanting results too quickly. And we think this is actually due to our research on anxious attachment behaviors. Most of our clients tend to exhibit anxious tendencies, while their exes exhibit avoidant tendencies. Now, the classic sign of someone who's anxious is they need a lot of reassurance in relationships. That's because they often gain their purpose entirely through relationships. So as you can imagine, a breakup occurring is a big deal to them and can often feel like their world is falling apart. Now, if this sounds like you, we're going to have to work on a mindset shift. Instead of scrambling post-breakup, asking for a second chance, begging for an ex back, trying to win them back, the first thing I really want to highlight for you is that my team and I have found that really how you ask for a second chance isn't nearly as important as when you ask for a second chance. So timing really does matter. And ultimately, 2 things need to happen before you even consider asking for an ex back. Number 1 is you need to be in the right place emotionally. And number 2 is you need to have rebuilt value. Now, the rest of this video is going to show you how to handle those things over the course of 4 specific steps. So let's jump on to step number 2. Step number 2 is adopting the mindset that you need to reinvest in yourself during the no contact period. All right, before I talk about reinventing, I'd first like to talk about the no contact rule. In my opinion, it's the single most important step you can take after a breakup, but not for the reason you probably are expecting. Most people come into implementing a no contact rule with sort of this intent of, I'm going to use this reverse psychological tactic to make my ex miss me. The reality is, when we deal with success stories, we find something that they're doing with the no contact rule is completely different. They're essentially not using the no contact rule to make an ex miss them. They're using it to outgrow their ex. So the no contact rule as a whole is basically this period of time where you're cutting off all conceivable communication with an ex after a breakup. Now, there are certain situations where you can't do that. You share children, you live together, you go to school together, you work together. The list can go on and on, but you can still do some form of no contact. Oftentimes we'll alter the no contact in those situations to be limited. So meaning you're engaging with them on a bare minimum level in those activities or in those situations where you're forced to engage with them. But when you're away from them, you're really just fulfilling the no contact rule criteria. So the key, though, is most people look at the no contact rule as this thing that you're going to do to trick your ex into missing you. We have actually found, and you can watch many of the success stories that I post to my YouTube channel for free to back this up, that the intent of you using the no contact rule to make your ex miss you actually does not make them miss you. What makes them miss you is when they see how well you're doing without them and when you're quote unquote reinventing yourself. Now, what's interesting is I think a lot of people will take offense to this concept of reinventing yourself. We do live in this society where we have sort of the woke culture where we're supposed to be perfect the way we're perfect. But I think if that's your read on reinventing yourself, then you have kind of a poor and limited outlook on life. There's not one person that's walking this earth that can't benefit from the idea of constant adaptation and mastery of self. There's not one person walking on this world that cannot benefit from that concept. And this idea of reinventing yourself isn't an idea that I can technically claim credit for. So a few months ago, I actually went down sort of the YouTube rabbit hole one night and stumbled across this video from this really famous Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach. His name is John Danaher. Really interesting guy, really interesting story, really smart guy. Very philosophical. I love the way he talks. And he talked about this concept where he has this fervent belief that human beings in most skill activities, not all skill activities, but most, can reinvent themselves in 5-year periods. Really what he's talking about is the concept of mastery. So according to him, if you can dedicate your life to acquiring a skill for 5 years, you can become world class within that skill. Maybe not the best in the world, but you can become a true master in anything in your life. 5 years. I love this because it touches the very heart of what I consider to be the key of getting an ex back, and that's finding something you care about more than your ex. And that leads us to step number 3.
Real quick, I want to say that if you're new to this YouTube channel or you're trying to figure out what you should be doing to get your ex back, and you're trying to learn if you even have a chance in your specific circumstance, probably the smartest thing for you to do is actually stop by our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, or take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz that can be found at exboyfriendrecovery.com. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, taking that free quiz is super easy to do. All you have to simply do is look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz where you can fill it out and get an easy answer on what you should be doing going forward and overall what your chances look like in your specific situation. All right, so let's get you back to the video.
Step number 3 is all about finding your magnum opus. So notice that so far we really haven't technically engaged in any of the external strategy to win an ex back or trick an ex to come back to you. Everything so far has been about mindset, internal based work. This is because before you even begin thinking about asking for an ex for that second chance, you need to be in the right frame of mind. But before I talk about the magnum opus concept, I'd first like to talk about the Holy Trinity concept because it is important. So the Holy Trinity is essentially this concept or view or philosophy outlook on life, where you're dividing your life up into 3 distinct categories. You have health categories, wealth categories, and relationships outside of your ex categories. Health can contain workouts, eating healthy, sleeping more, finding a stress outlet, feeling attractive, looking attractive, hydrating, hygiene, emotional health. All those things are in health. Wealth is money, social status, possessions, personal property, spiritual wealth, job, social capital, experiences, and getting a degree. Relationships can be friends, family, lovers, but we're going to put that out of this because we're not focusing on the X for this. Work friends, teachers, counselors, therapists, and even pets. Now, the key to the Holy Trinity concept is oftentimes you'll hear me talk to my clients and I'll explain to them they need to try to find a balance with their Holy Trinity during their no contact rule before they even think about talking to their ex. And really, it's all about becoming more fulfilled as a human being. But the reason I think it's important to bring up in a magnum opus sort of talk here is that it can actually help inform your magnum opus. So according to dictionary.com, I know I'm really digging into the obvious ones here. Most people don't really know what a magnum opus is, though, which is funny to me. So according to dictionary.com, the official definition of a magnum opus is a large and important work of art, music, or literature, especially one regarded as the most important work of an artist or writer. Essentially, the way I've always viewed it is that when you're on your deathbed and someone's like asking you, hey, what's the most important thing you did in your life? Well, the magnum opus is supposed to be your answer. It's that one thing that you'll be remembered for when it's all said and done. When you're dead, you're dust and bones, what will people remember about you? They'll remember magnum opus-based things. So the tragedy, though, is most people don't have a magnum opus because they live pretty unfulfilled lives. They're stuck in a routine, they're stuck in safety, and honestly, that's not what I want for you. What I want for you is to help find your magnum opus. And the truth is, I've written a lot of articles on my website, filmed a lot of videos on this YouTube channel talking about how to do just that. But I think kind of there's some brilliance and brevity, and that's the approach I think I'm going to take here. Oftentimes, the simplest explanation is the right explanation. So in my opinion, the best way to find your magnum opus is to find the one thing that intersects all the areas of the Trinity. What one thing can you dedicate your life to that will, number 1, help you live a healthy lifestyle, both physically and mentally. Number 2, earn you money. Number 3, help you establish relationships that leave you fulfilled. What is that thing? I don't know about you, but I've never seen an ex do all 3 of those things. They can do maybe 2 of the 3, but not all 3. So I want you to think long and hard about what thing can fulfill those 3 areas of criteria, and then you probably have found your magnum opus. Now this leads me to my next step. Every day needs to be about small progressions. Now, I know it seems like the stuff I'm talking about have no correlation to asking your ex for a second chance, but I promise it does. It will circle around at the end, so stick around. But one thing I've learned in my decade of work at ex-boyfriend recovery is that just getting to the right frame of mind is literally 90% of the battle for most people. Texts that make him or her respond, secret reverse psychology tactics, they're kind of overrated. They're kind of tricks. They're kind of the magic bullet solution that you're promised, but when you actually use, it's a blank. And this leads me to my next big point. Every day, from the moment the breakup occurs, you need to be thinking about stacking small progressions on top of one another in pursuit of that magnum opus goal that I just talked about. So you remember earlier when I said that I fell down the rabbit hole in YouTube and started watching this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu videos? I don't know how to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have no interest in doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I found his philosophy fascinating. So this guy, John Danaher, he talks a lot about life and sort of the purpose to life and how to master different areas of life. And the sentiment is something that was so strong, it really resonated with me. So here is his theory. If you look at the course of an average day, most days are actually pretty mundane. You can make a case that every so often there's like 2 or 3 days in your life that are monumental, and a change can occur that changes the course of or direction of your life. Something really good will happen or something really bad will happen. But the vast majority of days you experience are unexceptional. They're even boring. So if you operate with the assumption, there's a chance where you can literally drift through your entire life where the vast majority of your days are lived without any real meaning. And if that's the case, 95% of your life will have been a waste of time. It's a scary thought, very tragic one. So my take on it is we need to be absolutely selfish about our time and what we're spending it on. It's our most valuable asset in life, the one thing that once it's spent, you're never going to get back. So be selfish about what you're spending it on. Don't dedicate it to meaningless pursuits. Maybe your ex is not a meaningless pursuit. Maybe he is. Maybe she is. I don't know. I'm not really talking about that in this context now. Many of you listening to this will have realized that one of the reasons that I've spent so much time focused on the magnum opus concept is that I'm trying to inspire you to find a greater meaning in your life than your ex. Because weirdly enough, the key to getting an ex to say yes when you ask them for that second chance is you having this mindset that you have greater things to live for than your ex. And you need to find a magnum opus to do that. The paradox, though, is that true magnum opuses, they aren't built overnight. They're not built in years. They're built over the course of entire lifetimes. And this insinuates that one singular day in the pursuit of a magnum opus isn't going to make a huge difference, but stringing together thousands of these days, that's when something special happens. This is the way I want you to view your time after a breakup with your ex. Recognize that your goal for every singular day is to spend time focusing on an area of your life that gives you meaning. We're not trying to do it all in one day. We're just going to progress a small amount. Some days you'll feel like, oh, I could have done a little bit more, but as long as you're progressing, it's not a day that you wasted. The point here isn't try to climb all the way to the moon. The point is make small progress every single day towards that greater goal. It'll be maddening at times. May feel kind of as nothing is getting accomplished. You may be banging your head against the wall trying to figure out, how do I make this better? But we're measuring results over long periods of time. Now, while you're doing your work on the magnum opus, while you're progressing every single day, I also want you to be engaging in our final step. This is where we get into the strategies and tactics of asking for a second chance, and that's to engage in our value ladder system. So step 5, stick to the principles of the value ladder. Here's where the actual components of when to ask for a second chance come into play. Now, the truth is you shouldn't be asking for a second chance with an ex until you reach the top of the value ladder. What's the value ladder? Well, basically, it's a system I designed to explain how to properly rebuild value and get back in touch with an ex after a breakup. It works just like a ladder would. There are 5 main rungs that belong to it, each requiring you to master each level of the rung before you can climb to the next one, much like a ladder. Theoretically, if you get to the top of the ladder, you give yourself the best chance of having an ex say yes to a second chance with you. Of course, the reason I spent so much time on this video focusing on all the stuff that happens outside the value ladder is consistently when we're interviewing success stories that you can literally watch on my YouTube channel for free, they're citing the outside work as among their most impactful to their successes. Yes, they point to the value ladder. Yes, they point to specific texts and strategies, but more often than not, they're using those texts and strategies already having the correct mindset, already living for something greater than their ex. They're knocking that ex off the pedestal. But I'm getting off topic. So as stated before, the value ladder has 5 main rungs. It's got the no contact rule rung. That's kind of like the first step of the ladder. This is simply where you implement the no contact rule and pick that Magnum Opus type thing, progress every day, get into the right mindset, start knocking that ex off the pedestal. You're not even talking to your ex at this point. Once you feel like you've completed the no contact rule, you've done all of those things, then the texting phase rung can begin. This is the rung after the no contact rule is complete, where you begin to get back in touch with an ex and slowly start rebuilding value with them in the text medium. Once you've done that, the phone call rung is next. This is the phase where you simply start talking to your ex on the phone, FaceTime, video chat to rebuild value. Now, it's important to note here that the phone call phase simply gets added on top of the texting phase. It's not like you enter the phone call phase and that's the rest of your communication with your ex. You're also texting at the same time. So it's kind of like an additional add-on to the phone call, to the texting phase. The 4th phase is the meetup phase. Now, once enough value is built in texting and phone calls, you start seeing your ex in person and building romantic value there. You're going on dates with them, each date slowly becoming romantic. So you're starting out with kind of a meetup type date, then you're advancing to more romantic dates. Now, that leads us to the 5th and final rung. Once you're at the top of the ladder, you enter the ask phase. Now, usually once you've hit the meetup phase successfully, you're at a place where your ex is usually considering giving you a second chance. Give them the opportunity to ask you first before you ask for them back, before you ask for that second chance. Now, theoretically, the time to ask for your ex for a second chance is only after you've reached the top of the value ladder, but everything builds on top of each other, similar to how you keep adding things on top of one another for the value ladder. Magnum Opus, Holy Trinity, small progressions. These little things all combine to create the ideal scenario where you can successfully convince an ex to give you a second chance.